Hi YouTube friends! So it's me, Elizabeth again. I am going to be filming the results of our anatomy scan video and also some tips and tricks to make your anatomy scan go as smoothly as possible. Just things I learned from my anatomy scan, things that my doctor told me that I found really helpful. So just go ahead and keep watching. So we'll go ahead and we'll start off with the tips and tricks. So I had my anatomy scan at 20 weeks. You can do your anatomy scan, and a lot of people call it the gender reveal scan, but that's really like the least important part of the anatomy scan. So the anatomy scan, they're looking at all of the baby's internal organs, making sure that they're all developing in the right place, they're the right size, they're developing properly, they're looking at the brain, they're looking to make sure, if they are looking at the genitalia, to make sure that they are developing appropriately and that there's a clear gender either way. But the anatomy scan is definitely something that's really important, and more important than finding out the gender of your baby is finding out that you're having a healthy baby. So you can do your anatomy scan between 16 and 24 weeks gestation. A lot of people think, oh, the earlier the better, I want to know what I'm having, I want to know the gender, but it's actually better to do it after 20 weeks gestation, 20 weeks and after rather, so that you can get a better picture of things. That's when the heart is most, or more developed rather, and it's easier for them to see everything that they need to see without you having to come back. I had to come back actually, because even though I went at 20 weeks, they still couldn't get all the pictures of the heart that they wanted. So had I even waited a little bit longer, I probably would have had a more accurate scan, and I would not have had to come back for another scan at 23 weeks. Now that being said, going back and getting scanned again wasn't a huge deal. It wasn't anything that I personally didn't like, but a lot of people want to keep their scans at a minimum, so that's something to think about too. If you schedule a little bit later, it can save you from having to get another scan. Another tip that I have is to go really well hydrated. So I went first thing in the morning, and I maybe had 1 cup of water, not a whole lot to drink. And so I was not well hydrated, which means that the baby wasn't moving as much. Now, had I gone in and had like a big glass of water, and maybe even something with a little bit of sugar, some juice, or a soda or just something, the baby would have been moving a lot more, and it would have been easier for them to get the pictures. That's another reason why they were having a hard time getting pictures of the heart. Not so much that my baby wasn't developed enough, but that baby was not moving enough and getting in the right positions. So they had me like flipping and flopping and trying to get the baby to move. But had I just gone in better hydrated, that probably would not have been such an issue. The third thing that I want to advise is that if you had an early ultrasound, they probably did it with the internal ultrasound wand. And you're thinking, okay, I'm 20 weeks, 24 weeks, 16 weeks. I am pregnant enough that they don't have to go up there. They do. They still use the internal ultrasound wand to check the placement of your placenta and to also look at the length of your cervix. So that being said, make sure that your girly bits are good to go for that. If you're somebody who wants to have that shaved, that's fine. If you're just somebody, have taken a shower that day, probably a good idea. Now that being said, these ultrasound techs will have seen a bajillion and a half vaginas, and they honestly they don't remember one from the other, but you certainly don't want to be the nastiest one that they do remember. That wouldn't be good. Another thing that I can just say from working in healthcare is, as exciting as the anatomy scan is, and I know it's very exciting, we're finding out about the gender of the baby, we're finding out that everything's in the right spot, I would take total of 2 support people. So your spouse, your significant other, FOB, or mother of the baby, I guess, too. Whatever you have, your other person, or, your mother, your father, a combination of a group of support people, a really close friend, but no more than 2, because you take your whole family back there and we have a stressful result. Not everything looks perfect, and then you have your whole family back in this teeny tiny little room, very stressed out. It's very stressful for the ultrasound technicians, and it can be very stressful for you as a patient. The ultrasound technician is not really supposed to tell you any results of the anatomy scan, more so just like, oh, it's a boy or a girl, they can say that, or they can say everything looks good, but if something's wrong, they're gonna wait for the doctor, and that's just a whole nother level of stress. So my advice is to support people max. I just took my husband back with me and that worked out really well. And then it was something special that just the two of us, and we got to go tell people later the gender of our baby and that everything looked good. So I'm going to go ahead and go over my results. So with the internal wand, they saw that my cervix was an appropriate length, but that my placenta was a little bit close to my cervix. I had a marginal placenta previa that has since resolved. When I went back for the 23-week scan to check on baby's heart, they saw that the placenta had moved well out of the way, which was really good. They had difficulty viewing the heart, like I said, because I wasn't super well hydrated. Baby wasn't moving around all that much. And so that's something that I went back at 23 weeks and they got all the pictures they needed and baby looked perfect. And then the exciting thing that I'm sure everybody's waiting to hear, because I made this go on way, way too long, is that we are having a baby girl, which is so exciting. So I was convinced that we were having a boy, like absolutely convinced. We had a boy name picked out. I knew what I wanted to do for the nursery, all that stuff. Because at my 12 or 13 week nuchal translucency scan, they said that they thought that it could be a boy. And then I had a friend scan me at work. Now we have a really old ultrasound machine that we just checked to see if the baby's head down. And she thought that she maybe saw a penis. That was maybe at 15 weeks. So I was convinced it was a boy. But it was a girl. So how they look to see if the baby's a girl is they look for like 3 lines in between the legs, and those are the labia. And our baby had those. So we are having a baby girl and we are super, super excited. I also made them recheck the gender of the baby at that 23-week scan that I had 3 weeks later, and they confirmed that yes, it is a girl, because I still really wasn't believing them. But the ultrasound technician told me she'd been doing it for 30 years and had never been wrong. So I think she was a little insulted that I questioned her, but I was just so sure that it was a boy. Like, ever since I got pregnant, I was like, oh, it's a boy, it's a boy, it's a boy. And not that I'm not very happy to have a girl, but I thought it was a boy, and it's a girl, so that's very different. I'm going to go ahead and just insert some of our ultrasound pictures at the end of this and kind of label what you're seeing to the best of my knowledge. Baby, everything looked perfect with her, and we are just very excited to meet her in, gosh, 10 to 12 weeks, I guess. Up to 14 if I went over, but I ain't going to 42 weeks. Ain't no way, because I will get induced before that. Yeah, so if you like this video, go ahead and subscribe. And bump dates that you can watch for most of my 20 weeks, as well as the first trimester recap. And I also am going to be filming a video on how we got pregnant this time, because we did try to conceive for 10 to 11 months. It was quite a little while. So I'm going to give you guys an update on that, because I think that might be very helpful for some people to see, just some things that we found helpful getting pregnant. So thanks so much for watching. Bye guys!